Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we have another excellent show. We are trying to do 2 in a row this week just to catch up on our October, our disappearing act of October. We're I don't know what would you say you were? This is our second day in a row trying to catch up a little bit. What are you about? Yeah, what are you, 97% maybe? You were 95 yesterday.
Probably about the same.
All right, so 95 and 95. Being unchanged is okay as long. We don't want you to go lower, but we want the percentages to go up. So hopefully you'll be all right by tomorrow, and yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
But we are Why Does This Exist? We are a show that explores the very weirdest in pop culture, regardless if it is a movie, video game, franchise, which we are about to do, a strange product of any kind, or anything that falls within and without of those realms that is past, present, and future. We will get to it at some point or another. You can find us wherever you get any of your podcasts, including the big ones, Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff, iTunes, and all those other big areas where you get your podcasts. If you do like what we're doing, please leave a 5-star review so that way people can find us and this can get bigger, and then eventually maybe we can take this into your town and we can do a live show somewhere someday. Wouldn't that be fun? You can also, if you want to support the show another way and you want to give us your hard-earned cash, you can do so by heading over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. And there's a ton of different prizes that you could choose from, and you could give us however much money you do or don't want to do. Just $1. Any of that will let you into the Discord server, and you will be able to talk with us and just hang out and, just see what we're up to. And, it'll be a grand old time. You can also find us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at Why Does This Exist, and I believe it's Why Does This Exist Pod. You can also catch our articles and more over at whydoesthisexistpod.com. If you want to send us anything, if you want to send us some questions or anything else that you'd like to do, you could do so in a number of ways. The first is in private by emailing us over at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com, or you can head on over to our YouTube channel. That's Why Does This Exist with a question mark at the end. And you will be able to just simply like, comment, and subscribe to our stuff. Or you could even leave a dislike. It doesn't really make a difference. Whatever you do helps the channel. So just any form of interaction will give us a bump in ratings, subscribers, all of the above. We really do appreciate it. I'm not as enthusiastic as I normally am because I simply just want to get to the show because we have quite a bit to talk about, and it's something near and dear to many people's hearts. But that is the news. Here is the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. Let's get on with the goddamn show. We're talking about Castlevania.
Castlevania.
For anyone
so you like to play Castlevania?
Yes, I like very much to play Castlevania. This is a video game about Dracula, and you're going into Castle Dracula, and you're going to kill Dracula, but you are in some cases. I don't know why I'm a Portuguese vampire. Today I'm a Portuguese vampire. Come to Portugal. It's beautiful. Come to Lisbon and explore the castles. It's very nice. It's very affordable. And the food is great. You're hunting down Dracula, and sometimes, like in Symphony of the Night, you are in fact his son. In one of the later games, you actually get to play as Dracula, I believe.
Yeah, so that was the Lords of Shadow series, which was like a spin-off series. It wasn't... the Lords of Shadow kind of established its own canon, and it was like almost like a reboot of the series. The original series you primarily play... I thought it was
an alternate timeline.
Yeah, it is. It's like a reboot in an alternate timeline. Okay. Because in the original series, you primarily play as the Belmont clan of vampire hunters.
Yes. You are the Belmonts.
Yeah. And chronologically, starting with Lament of Innocence, which came out in 2003, but is set in the year... Chronologically is the earliest game in the series, because it's set in the year 1094. And you basically, it focuses on the first Belmont, or one, the first like major Belmont, who is Leon Belmont, and his friend Matthias Kronkvist, who ends up being Dracula. So it basically tells the origin story of the Belmonts versus Dracula. So throughout the various Castlevania games, and the Castlevanias as they all came out, they're not in any kind of like chronological order. Like chronologically, they're in like, if you look at the chronological list, it's all over the place. It's not like, because Lament of Innocence, like I said, came out in 2003, but that's the earliest game chronologically. The second earliest game chronologically is Dracula 3, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, which takes place
where you are Trevor Belmont.
Yeah,
at least it starts the Trevor Belmont era.
Right, and the TV show, which recently concluded on that was on Netflix, was based off of the Dracula 3 era of Castlevania. It was primarily based around. Yeah, it was very good. I haven't finished it. I've seen the first 2 seasons. I have yet to see the second 2 seasons.
Yeah, I really have to sit down and watch it. I would like to rewatch it actually, because it was very, very good.
Yes,
and I haven't watched. I'm not a particularly a huge anime fan. I do like. There's a few sporadically that I will watch if enough people recommend them to me, and some of them I will go and seek out because I've heard good things about it. I'm slowly getting into it, but I'm not. It's not totally my thing, but I do appreciate a lot of it. Yeah. But this one I absolutely fell in love with.
Yeah, it was great. It was, and I was like wary about it because a lot of stuff that's based off of video games ends up being shitty.
And also, it was a Netflix original, which many Netflix originals also end up being horrendous. So it was like the odds were not in its favor.
Yes, but they really did the series justice. It was really great. They really told the origin story of Dracula and Alucard really well, and Lisa, who's Dracula's wife in the series. So Alucard was originally introduced in Castlevania 3 as a hidden playable character, because in Castlevania 3 you could play as Trevor, Sypha, who's also in the TV series, Alucard, and Grant, who is like this guy who could like throw daggers and climb on walls and stuff. And so kind of that established Alucard as like a fan favorite character. And then Castlevania Symphony of the Night came out in 97, I believe. And that kind of really like drove home Alucard as like the, one of the fan favorite characters, because he's the primary character of that. You briefly play as Richter Belmont in the beginning, and you can also, play as him in like an alternate playthrough. But the main character is Alucard, and you really learn his backstory. He's of course the son of Dracula and Lisa, who's a human woman, and his mother was basically burned at the stake for being a heretic, because she was a doctor, and she was accused of being a witch and burned at the stake because she was trying to heal people.
Yes, because that makes sense.
Yes, and it also kind of it explains Dracula's hatred of the human race, also because
they're all hypocrites. I don't blame him.
Yeah,
I don't like the human race, but it's there, and even though I'm a part of it, I don't particularly like the human race all that much, and I stand with Dracula.
Yeah,
that would be a great thing to put on a button, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just a nice I stand with Dracula, and it's just
I stand with Dracula.
It's just all red, and it just says I stand with Dracula in black. And it's just a blood red button. You know what? I think we should make that.
The original NES games, Castlevania 1, Simon's Quest, and Castlevania 3, really didn't establish Dracula. It was just like a big bad. Like, he was like, okay, he's the big last boss.
Yeah, Symphony of the Night. I mean, there weren't any. There wasn't really any, or at least in a lot of like just video games in that era, there wasn't really much story to it. It was just it's a 2D side scroller. It's a beat 'em up game. You got to do some puzzles and platforming, sure, but you're just a guy, and you have to go like slay all the bad guys. There wasn't really too many games that actually established any real lore or anything. So yes, Dracula was more of a big bad, as well as some of the other classic monsters that you'd see.
Yeah, and Symphony of the Night kind of changed that because it made Dracula more of a sympathetic character,
right? Which I think is
almost like a tragic character,
right? Which he is in the story.
Yes,
like it followed a little bit more on the Bram Stoker the Bram Stoker side. Of things, and that's one of the reasons why Symphony of the Night is a lot of people's favorites.
It's my second favorite game of all time, behind Ocarina of Time.
Wow, it's definitely in my top 5. And, it's good.
It's just so good.
Yes, it took me a long time. I didn't actually play it until they released it on the Xbox 360. Because I didn't have a PlayStation growing up. I got a PlayStation eventually, but I hadn't gotten to that game by the time it was one of those things where it was like, I got the PlayStation in college because a friend was just getting rid of it. I barely played many games for it because I was going after other consoles, so I just started building my PS2 collection a lot more and my and what have you. So I didn't really get a chance to play it, and I think by then I had already sold or traded in the PlayStation, so I hadn't gotten a chance to play it. But when I did finally play it, when they put it on the 360 store for like, I don't know, $10 or something.
Yeah, I think it was like on the arcade or whatever.
Yeah, I immediately fell in love with that game.
Yeah. I played it when I was a kid when it came out because my uncle had a PlayStation. So whenever I went to my grandmother's house, I would play it on my uncle's PlayStation. And so like I got to play it growing up, and I loved it. Like it was so, and part of it was because like I didn't get to play the PlayStation all the time. So like when I did, it was like it was like a new experience kind of thing.
Sure,
but it was just such a great game, and like even to this day, I'll still like pick it up and play it, and like have a great time playing it. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
I've played some of the other Castlevanias. I do like the original Castlevanias that were more action-orientated platformers. They were good too. They're fun. They're very hard, which was like kind of like the staple of the Castlevania series. Yeah.
4, I think. Well, I would say 2 and 4 are probably the most difficult for different reasons.
Well, 4 was fairly difficult. Like it was just a challenging game. 2 was difficult because it was like broken. There was like things about it that they didn't. It was not done well. And it's since been fixed. Actually, there was a fan project to make Simon's Quest like better and fix it and make it actually playable. And apparently, it's like when AVGN did his recap episode on Simon's Quest, he was talking about it a little bit because, of course, Simon's Quest was the first Angry Video Game Nerd episode ever.
Yeah,
and he later on did like a recap episode where he like went back to it and re-explored it, and he talked a little bit about this fan project that made it better.
Cool. Well, yes, as I was going to say that that 4 is hard because it's just a hard game, but 2 is hard because like you said, things have not been done well. But also, there's a lot of cryptic things in it where you would just never know to do it unless either someone showed you or you read a cheat or whatever.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't. It's very unlikely that you would figure it out unless you did it completely by accident.
Yeah.
For example, there's like the famous thing where you have to go to like the beginning of the level or a specific spot in the level at night, and you have to kneel for a certain amount of time or crouch, and then a tornado takes you away to the next level. And it's like, how the hell would anyone know to do that?
Especially in the days of before the internet, which is, you know, so like you would never know that unless you got Nintendo Power and, you know, read it in Nintendo Power, basically.
Right, and it's not like there were any hints in the game. Like, all you needed was something that was like an arrow in the game to tell you where to go, and then it would tell you to, and then another arrow telling you, like, just pointing down at the right spot. But none of that's there, so you have to just kind of figure it out on your own, which, like we said, is virtually impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you imagine that somebody found out because they were just kneeling in they were just crouching and kneeling in every area? That's gotta be how it happened.
Yeah.
Either that or, like, he was friends with somebody. Either that or somebody from the development team just, like, told him, hey. Or maybe there's specific things that they have to tell Nintendo Power so that they can sell copies of the magazine. So that's how that got in there, which that's probably the most likely answer.
Yeah, because it was before the days of strategy guides, too. There weren't really strategy guides, so Nintendo Power is the only way to find out.
Yeah, well, that was when they had everybody by the balls. Good old Nintendo Power.
Yes. So, yeah.
That's what the Power Glove's for. It's for ball grabbing. Now you're playing with power.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Oh, well, we're canceled. There we go. That was too crass, Chris. I didn't appreciate that. I thought this was a family show.
No. Nope. Not anymore.
No, it's not. YouTube asks me, is this video for kids? And I have to say no every time. So, it's for older families.
So there's a variety of different, like, kind of genres that Castlevania has explored throughout its history. Like I said, the originals were, like, action-oriented platformers. Simon's Quest kind of introduced a little bit of, like, the RPG elements and the exploration that would be, like, more of a staple of the later games, like Symphony of the Night.
Yes, and Symphony of the Night is where we get the Metroidvania moniker.
Yeah, so literally, Symphony of the Night and Super Metroid kind of created a genre, which is Metroidvania games, which has been, like, you know, its own genre since then. And it's been, you know, basically like side-scrolling RPGs that you collect a lot of items in, you know, and there's a lot of exploration. So it's, you know, kind of been like its own genre now. So there's been that, and then also with the N64, Castlevania 64, it started to get into, like, the 3D, you know, platforming action game.
And they borrowed a lot of mechanics from Ocarina of Time, too.
Yeah. And I only got a chance to play a little bit of Castlevania 64. It's actually one of the games that I hope they eventually put on the virtual, or not the virtual console, I don't know what they even call it, the N64, Nintendo Switch N64 app or something, because I actually would like to play through it.
It has gotten the reviews on that game are interesting because they were originally acclaimed, and then over time it kind of fell in the middle for the 64 ones.
I had a friend that had it, and, you know, so I played it at his house a number of times, and he liked it a lot. And I did like it from what I played, but it was very hard, and it wasn't really so much the RPG, it was more like the action platformer.
Yes, it was more the clunkiness of the game in itself that people didn't like. It wasn't.
Yeah,
it didn't really have much to do with the game, but more the gameplay, and the camera, I remember, was terrible.
Yeah, the camera was not good, and that was one of the major problems with it. It was cool that they had two playable characters. There was the main character who used, like, the whip, like the traditional whip, which the whip is one of the things that's present in pretty much every Castlevania. It's called the Vampire Killer, and it's basically passed down through the Belmont clan, and it's like an anointed holy whip that can kill monsters and vampires. And it's like the most famous thing of Castlevania because it's like the main weapon of most of the games. But so you could play as, the traditional guy with the whip and also like a girl that could do spells. Then there was also Castlevania Legacy of Darkness on the N64, which I never played. I heard that was kind of the better one of the two of them. But it was like less known, like not as many people played that one. More people played Castlevania 64.
I never really played any of the 64 ones. I think I may have played a little bit of. If I played Castlevania 64, it was either I rented it from Blockbuster or somebody that I knew rented it from Blockbuster and I went over their house.
Yeah.
Because nobody I knew owned those games. So if I did play it, I'm pretty sure that I had played it, that like somebody had rented it.
Yeah.
But I have seen other people play it, and like that's all I really know is that the gameplay wasn't great and that the camera was particularly bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really know about. I didn't realize that they had two of them for the N64. I thought that was just the one. It was for the most
like
part.
I said, it was very like a little known one, the Legacy of Darkness. And they both came out the same year too, so that was like the other interesting thing. They both came out in 1999, so I think one kind of got overlooked because a lot of people didn't like the Castlevania 64 as much.
That would make sense.
Kind of, yeah.
No, do they canonically happen one after another, or are they just? Is one a direct sequel to the other, or does it not really matter? Are they just two separate games?
Legacy of Darkness, which is the second game, actually takes place like several years before Castlevania 64.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the timeline of Castlevania is really screwed up because they didn't make the games to be in chronological order. So they jump around the timeline a lot, and then of course they reset the whole timeline with Lords of Shadow and reboot the whole series. Right. And did like an alternate timeline.
Right, which that one I do have to commend them because they ended up the developers ended up Konami ended up listening to feedback and tweaking the game and re-releasing it.
Yeah.
And they made it a much better game. Like the main issue that people had the main issue that people had with the Lords of Shadow games initially was there were too many action sequences where you weren't actually fighting the monsters or doing the killing blows or anything. You were this was just kind of a product of its time. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of the God of War mini games and such, where it was the finishing blows and everything, a lot of other action games picked up on it, and they kind of ran with that, where it was something similar. But some did it equally to God of War, like Dante's Inferno, which I think is an underrated game, but unfortunately, it clearly is a God of War clone. So that's kind of why it's just overlooked a lot of the time. But there were others where, similar to Lords of Shadow, where they overdid it, and most of the fight is just an animated sequence where you're just pushing or you're just hitting the right buttons at the right time, and there's really no skill or involved in fighting the monsters, which is half the reason why you actually bought the damn game. But they listened to the feedback, Konami, and they tweaked the game, they re-released it, and there were far less of these sequences. And the game ended up getting, the re-release ended up getting much better reviews. So I do have to tip my hat to Konami for actually listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that was back when they were, because now Konami's kind of got off the deep end a little bit, and they really even haven't made too many games recently. They've been focusing on mobile games and pachinko machines, apparently.
Yeah, that was the next thing that I was gonna say. Was Castlevania did end up getting into a rough patch with Konami, as now there are existing sexualized Castlevania pachinko machine. So there's a sexy Castlevania pachinko going around.
Yeah.
Which, if you like pachinko, that's fine. Pachinko is it's a Japanese. Well, how would you put it?
It's like
it's kind of like a Japanese slot machine in a way.
Almost, yeah. Except you like basically it's like dropping like a disc or a ball down, and like it hits all these pegs, and the idea is to try to get it into like the slot that makes you like you win in. So like it goes down this like machine and like bounces off these little pegs and kind of like randomly goes until it hits one of the slots at the bottom, and then whatever the slot is like a prize or you lose.
If you thought slot machines were rigged, take a look at this.
Yeah.
And now with vampires and sexiness.
Yeah.
It's just...
yeah, Konami is kind of like...
Now with Simon Belmont's dong. Pachinko.
Yeah. It's kind of gone off the deep end a little bit, and they really haven't been making anything like decent in recent memory.
If you like Castlevania whips and chains, well then you hold on to your seatbelts.
There is, however... way back in a while ago, it was like several years ago. So the original creator of Castlevania Symphony of the Night and of several other Castlevania games, Koji Igarashi, when he left Konami in 2014, he went to he wanted to make a new game, and he went to Kickstarter and made a new studio and made a Kickstarter for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which was basically a game that was a spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And he actually got a lot of the old team that worked on Castlevania Symphony of the Night to develop the game. Actually the composer from Symphony of the Night, it was what's her name? Michiru Yamane. She's a Japanese composer. She did the music for it, and it really is a great game. It's very much like reminiscent of Castlevania, the old good Castlevania RPG games like Symphony of the Night, Dawn of Sorrow, those games. So it's a lot of fun. And it's good that he's kind of like carrying on the legacy of Castlevania, even though he can't like use the Castlevania name, obviously, because it's copyrighted by Konami. It's still kind of carrying on the legacy and making games that are similar to it, and which is great.
It is very cool, and I'm glad that he was able to do it. I mean, he raised the money very quickly. In fact, I would say he octupled his goal. Oh yeah, they blew away the goal and made basically every like stretch goal that they put out, they made. And then some. He asked for originally 500,000, and hours after opening, it raised it was funded, and it eventually raised 5.5 million. So yeah, just unbelievable how much he was able to raise. But that's the dedication of the fan base. People wanted to see this game made, and they made damn sure that it did. Yeah, and he delivered. Unlike a Mighty Nine, which did not. I've only backed 2 games on Kickstarter. 2 things on Kickstarter. It was Bloodstained Ritual of the Night and Yooka-Laylee. Those are the only 2 things I've ever backed on Kickstarter. Well, you picked some winners. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, not everyone can say that. They were both, tried and tested development teams that I knew were going to make an awesome game. So that's why I was willing to do it. I was willing to lay the money down for the development of it, because I was like, these are going to be awesome games when they come out. And both were. Bloodstained was awesome, and Yooka-Laylee was awesome. And you can't beat that. Allegedly, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night there's a sequel that's in development. I don't know how that's been delayed with the COVID-19 pandemic and stuff, but it's in development. There was also Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which was one of the
stretch goals, they developed it as a second. It was like a companion game, and it was more in the retro style. So it was actually almost very similar to Castlevania 3, because it was like you could switch between different characters, but it was that old school 8-bit pixelated side-scrolling action game. So more in that vein rather than the RPG Metroidvania that Bloodstained Ritual of the Night was. So that was great too. That was a really fun game too.
Nice.
Also really hard, very much like reminiscent of the original Symphony of the, Castlevania for the NES. That was like incredibly hard. My favorite Castlevania games personally are the RPG style ones, like Symphony of the Night. Like I said before, is my favorite. It's my second favorite game of all time.
I've only really played... Sorry, continue.
I was going to say, just Dawn of Sorrow is another one that came out for the Nintendo DS in 2005. That's another great one.
Yes, a lot of the better ones that people seem to, or a lot of the better recent ones that people seem to like, have been the portable platformer ones.
Yeah. There was a number of good ones for Game Boy Advance, and that were really fun.
Did they follow the Metroidvania style?
Some of them did, and some of them were more the original action kind of like OG Castlevania style.
Okay, because there's a lot of Castlevania games actually.
Yes, yeah, a shit ton of Castlevania games. The only sad thing is that there hasn't been a mainline Castlevania game since 2007, 2008. Because like I said, Lords of Shadow was kind of a reboot of the series, so. Like, and even Lords of Shadow 2, we haven't that came out in 2014, so we really haven't had a Castlevania game since 2014.
There's 30 games in total.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have Rondo of Blood, which I have heard very good things. I have never played it. It was originally just released in Japan. Now, you can actually get it, you could get it on the Wii's Virtual Console service eventually in North America in 2010.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's been... 2018 it was included along with Symphony of the Night for the Castlevania Requiem collection. So you can play it now, and if you have a TurboGrafx 16 Mini, you can play it too.
Alright.
So there is hope.
Well, I think maybe with...
And the Turbo Duo can do it too, which I don't know what the hell the Turbo Duo is.
Hopefully with the success of the Castlevania anime series and, the, renewed interest in Castlevania, maybe... And so apparently they're also making another Castlevania anime that's going to be centered around Alucard, and I think it's going to be more taking place during, the Symphony of the Night era. So it'll be, in the 1700s, and we'll probably see, Richter Belmont, and Maria Renard, who's another character in Symphony of the Night.
Nice. Well, there originally was a, in the late 80s, as part of the Mario Power Hour, they were going to do a Castlevania show, and they had concept art and everything, but it just didn't end up happening.
I'm kind of glad.
I'm glad. I was going to say I'm glad because it would have been very cheesy and hokey.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's ever seen the Legend of Zelda cartoon that came out around that time, it was very, very cheesy.
Yeah, and then in the late 2000s, there were plans to do a Castlevania film. I'm not sure if it was live action or not, but they were going to be working on it, and then they canceled it due to the writers' strike, and then the studio got sold, and the Screen Actors Guild was about to strike, so they just canceled it in 2009, and the studio probably lost a bunch of money in 2008 and 9, so that made perfect sense as to why it didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't, because I don't want to know what would have been. Especially if the plan was live action. But they did a wonderful job with the anime, as we said before. But there have been... the creator, Hitoshi Akamatsu, the creator of Castlevania, was an interesting fellow. Mm-hmm. He was very elusive, and he in fact he did a few of the Castlevania games, of the first few. He had worked on the Goonies too as a director of the game, not the movie. I don't even know I don't think that there was a Goonies 2 ever made. I hope that there wasn't, because if I haven't heard about it, it's probably because it's terrible. And he also was a programmer on Metal Gear Snake's Revenge, which is the non-canon sequel to the game.
Was awful.
I've heard. I've not played. I have heard that it is quite terrible.
Well, especially because there was a sequel to Metal Gear on the PC Engine, I think, in Japan, that was like really good. And then, like, the United States got Snake's Revenge.
This crap. Of course, terrible. They gave the States the worst. Yeah. You American dogs, here you go.
Are you from Snake's Revenge?
So he'd come up with Castlevania. He directed the game, and he was very passionate about it. And then I don't know what the hell happened, but after I believe it was shortly after Castlevania 3: Dracula's Curse, he moved to the arcade division, and then he basically he did an interview with some random magazine. He's barely done any actual he's rarely done any other interviews other than that. I believe it was Wireframe, I think, that he did I'm not even sure, but he did an interview, and then shortly after, he just disappeared from the industry. Nobody really knows what the hell happened. He's like, I hope he's having a good time doing whatever he's doing, but shortly after that, he just left.
Yeah.
But the idea was that he was really proud of the direction, and he really wanted to make a game where you could fight the Universal movie monsters, and that was really where the idea came from.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows too much of what's going on, because the interesting thing is, during the 8-bit era, as you will, or in the early-ish games of video, the early-ish days of video games, a lot of the credits that you'll see on video games are all pseudonyms, or they're all like fake
Fred
names.
Fox.
Yeah, well, that might be a guy's real name. I mean,
maybe
he's that poor SOB, Fred Fox. Or I'm sure that guy's going around, like, every time someone reads, he's probably like, "It's Fuchs, damn it, it's Fuchs." This guy, he must have a miserable existence. If my last name was Fuchs and everyone kept telling me that it was Fox, I would probably change my name. But then again, you might have a personality like Michael Bolton from Office Space, where you're like, why should I change? Everyone else sucks. Which, that's a pretty valid point to have. But a lot of the programmers in that game, because the video game companies it was so new and so untamed, that people didn't want to companies were protective, and they didn't want of their staff, and they didn't want them to get poached by Atari or Nintendo or anything like that. So they would intentionally have their programmers enter it, like, credit it as fake names.
Yeah.
So a lot of the names that you're seeing, a lot of the credits that you see on those old games, that's not the name of the guy or gal who programmed the game. So, and the same goes for the Castlevania games on who the creator is. It's actually unclear of who the real creator is, but a lot of roads point to Hitoshi Akamatsu. But nobody is totally sure. So, of course, a game about vampire hunting would be shrouded in mystery as to who the creator is, which is interesting. There has been no success to track him down. So, we're not really sure what happened and who the creator is. But whoever the creator of Castlevania is, our hats off to you. If it is, in fact, Akamatsu, well, well done.
Yeah.
But
well, we know that
shrouded in mystery, just like as you would only hope that a horror themed game would be.
Yeah, we at least know Koji Igarashi, who worked on the what everyone's favorite Castlevanias, which was the RPG ones like Symphony of the Night and all that.
Yes, and the Belmont clan is it's quite vast. How many people there are? There's a ton of.
Yeah, so the Belmonts basically
eras.
center around almost every Castlevania game, and it's like basically just like Descendants. Like I said, Leon is the original, then we go to Trevor, then Simon, Richter is the Richter Belmonts in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and so the Belmonts were finally recognized in Super Smash Brothers, in the newest Super Smash Brothers, finally, because, I mean, it's about time, because, Castlevania has been a staple of Nintendo for a long time. They weren't ever Nintendo exclusive, obviously, but, like the first 3 games are on the NES, and of course you have Super Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo, so it's always been centered around Nintendo, and they finally added both Simon and Simon and Richter, rather, into Super Smash Brothers as playable characters, and
yes.
so that's really cool.
And Alucard is an assist trophy, which is a nice addition, and you can you also get a really neat stage.
Yeah, the
fight where Dracula even really shows up, and
I believe Death too.
Yes, he does. And the main storyline, it's not really a storyline in the Smash Bros. Well, there is a storyline in the Smash Brothers game. When you do the single player mode, one of the bosses is Dracula, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So they showed a little bit of love, and Kid Dracula is in there too. Kid Dracula was a spin-off game.
Yes, Kid Dracula was a spin-off where I think you actually technically play as Alucard, like a young Alucard. If I remember. Kid Dracula is also introduced the demon Galamoth, who would later become a really big bad in later Castlevania games, such as Symphony of the Night. And there was the Castlevania fighting game where Galamoth was like the main enemy.
Oh, I didn't know there was a fighting game.
It was like a 3D fighting game. It was like a 3D kind of like. It was for the Wii, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
let's see if I can find it.
I didn't know that they even. Oh yeah, I forgot that they put out a Wii game.
Yeah, it was. No, that's not it. Aria Sorrow. I forget what it was called now, and I can't find it on. That's not it. Fortune Ruin, that wasn't it. Curse of Darkness, no. Let's see if I can find it here. Hold on.
Oh, it's not that important.
No.
But I guess we could call it Castlevania Wii.
Oh, it was Castlevania Judgment. It was what it was called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically Galamoth is the main enemy of that. And, so yeah, that was introduced originally in Kid Dracula. There was also Castlevania Harmony of Despair, which was another game on the Xbox 360 arcade. It was kind of just like, it was a side-scrolling platformer, that and it was like multiplayer, which was kind of cool. So you could actually have multiple people play, and it was like you played as Alucard, Soma Cruz, Jonathan Morris. It was a number of characters, and basically like you get to go throughout like this huge castle. It was fun. It was a nice little arcade kind of style Castlevania. And it had a lot of the enemies from previous games, which was really cool. They brought back a lot of the old enemies, which was kind of a recurring thing in the Castlevania games. They bring back a lot of old enemies. There's a lot of recurring bosses. For example, like Death is a boss in like a lot of the Castlevania games. At one point, you fight Death.
Well, he's the hardest working guy in the franchise.
Yeah, pretty much.
he's working. The guy's on the clock all the time. You know, you're murdering, you're killing things left and right. They're trying to kill you. I mean, it's no wonder that Death has a boss in that game, because he's really pissed that he's got to work overtime.
It's funny because like they just like make Death out to be like just Dracula's BFF pretty much. Like he's just like friends with Dracula. That's why he's there. And it's like, especially in like Symphony of the Night, because you like encounter Death when you first enter the castle and he steals all your weapons and stuff, basically.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, like Lord Alucard, what are you doing here? It's like, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. Leave. I have to tell you to leave because I'm, your dad told me to. Like, it's like stupid. Like, get out of here. So it's just, it's funny. The original, that was like the one drawback of Castlevania. I personally think it's charming, but a lot of people think it's stupid, was the voice acting of Symphony of the Night. It was pretty bad, but I think it's like kind of funny and charming. And
I feel like it helps add to the game.
Yeah, it's like so melodramatic. Yeah,
yeah, like it is not very good acting, and it's as wooden as a stake through the heart. There you go. I thought there'd be a good vampire joke somewhere, but
it's
the acting,
pretty funny.
It's pretty bad, but it does. But it
has the classic lines that are just like hilarious. Like the writing is just.
Yes, it does add to the game, and it really helped. And like honestly, around that time, if there was any voice acting at all, it was usually not very good.
No.
Like it was,
and especially in
a lot
game,
of times it wasn't even it wasn't even a real voice actor. It was just somebody who worked there that just needed to get somebody to do it. So they were like, "Hey, John, like we need you just came back from lunch. We need you to just record a couple of lines in there."
Yeah. Well, and especially because Castlevania was a Japanese game that was brought over here and translated into English, like there's a lot of like translation errors and stuff. So that that was a problem. Because the budget for translators is not high,
right? And the games where they actually did get real voice actors, like you can tell because the acting is legitimately good. Whereas a lot of the earlier games, it's like. Most of the time, it's just like some random person who works there.
Yeah. Something I wanted to say, but I forgot. I lost my train of thought now. Damn it!
In relation to what?
Symphony of the Night, but I don't remember now. So.
Okay.
Whatever. So, I think they originally, they re-released, Symphony of the Night a number of times, and I think one of the times they did, they tried to, have, a new voice cast, but it was not good. It was even worse than the original.
How do you do that?
Yeah, it was on the PSP or something. The PSP version. They tried to improve it, but it was just this is lame. It's not the original voices, that was part of the charm of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It was the stupid fucking voice acting.
Yeah, we wanted it to be bad. Now you're just giving us, now you're we appreciated it being bad. We didn't want you to give us worse.
Yeah. I remember. So Castlevania Symphony of the Night, we had mentioned this, I think, in one of the previous episodes. I think the episode when we talked about CDs, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night was one of the games that you could put into a CD player and actually listen to a hidden track that was not in the game. And you would actually get a little message from Alucard about not playing the first track of the CD because it was where the game data was stored and stuff.
Oh, really?
It was pretty funny. He's congratulations on finding the hidden music, and make sure you don't play the first track of the CD. That's where the hidden game, or that's where the game data is. But you're not going to listen to me, are you? Or something like that. It was something funny.
Yeah, probably. That's pretty good. If you did listen to the first track, did it destroy the game?
I don't think so. I think just nothing would play and nothing would happen. I never listened to the first track. I only played it in a CD player.
Oh, so you're one of the few people that listen to him.
Yeah, I did listen to him.
Oh, well, what kind of co-host are you?
I'm terrible.
I didn't own the game, so it's not like I could. It's not like I could have anything better. It's probably worse off for me. But you're the host and you didn't do this, you friggin' idiot. Why did I give you $1 on? You know what? Why did I give you $1 on Patreon.com/whydoesthisexist? I want my money back. In fact, you could take your Discord and shove it.
All right.
I'll give you some Discord.
I'll buy that for $1.
Really, Symphony of the Night originally sold poorly. I did not know that. I thought it was very. I thought that it had sold well, but
I think it became a cult classic, and it like sold more after the fact. Like originally, when it came out, it was kind of like a sleeper hit, And
that explains why there wasn't really a sequel like afterwards that was in a similar vein.
Well, I mean, there were other games.
There were other Vania types of games, but. They're, but like the immediate sequels, like if this was an immediate hit, you would probably all the sequels that followed, or at least a good number of them that followed, would all be in a similar fashion.
Yeah, they actually didn't kind of return to the like the Symphony of the Night Metroidvania style until later on. I think Circle of the Moon was the next like mainline Castlevania game that came out besides the N64 games. That was like a side scroller. And it was like the original, like, just action side-scroller rather than, like, RPG.
Also, the cool thing about Symphony of the Night is that you basically play the game twice. Like, you beat it, and then, like, you run through the game, you collect all the pieces of Dracula that you need to collect, and you go through the castle and you do what you have to do, and you think that you've saved the day and that you finished the game and everything, and that for all acquaintance be forgot, and you're wrong. You have to do it all over. You have to do it back. You have to do the castle upside down because now all the shit's really hit the fan. Yeah, you were just helping the first part. Now, you're really going down. Which at least you have your lives and your save checkpoints. Unlike Super Ghosts and Goblins, where you're friggin' done.
Yeah. Well, and the original, so when you're in the first castle, you get to the final boss up in Dracula's throne room, and it turns out to be Richter Belmont, who's been bewitched. And a lot of people didn't realize that, you think, okay, you kill Belmont and that's it. But no, that's the bad ending. So you actually have to go through and find what's called the Holy Goggles. It's like a special item that allows you to see curses. And that way you can see the, shaft, the Dark Priest shaft controlling Richter Belmont.
Oh, and what a shaft.
Yeah.
What a shaft it is.
He ends up getting shafted.
He'll shaft you.
So anyway, if you defeat like that, you break the curse instead of killing Richter, then you end up finding out, oh shit, I have to go to the Upside Down Castle because that's where Dracula really is. And then you go through the whole castle again except upside down, which is actually a really interesting thing the way they did it, because now it opens up all new exploration paths, and you really need the so Alucard has the ability to change into a wolf, a bat, or a mist, and you really need the bat and the mist in the Upside Down Castle because it's everything you have to fly up to
areas.
Exactly.
Now the castle being inverted, you have to go. It's a whole nother dimension. It is just a totally different dimension to the game.
Yeah, and it's cool the way they change things slightly. Everything looks a little bit different in the Upside Down Castle. It's not exactly how it is in the original castle. The colors are different, and enemies are stronger, obviously. And it's really cool the way they did it.
Yeah, and also, it doesn't feel, it's not lazily done.
No, it was very well done. It was and it's interesting because when you first get in the castle, obviously you start off on the ground floor, and then when you're in the Upside Down Castle, you're starting off in the tallest tower, and you have to work your way down. Yes. Except even though you're going up, you're actually going down. Or vice versa. If you're going down, but you're actually going up because it's upside down. So
right,
it's interesting the way they did it.
It's a nice allegory for the gateway to hell, or a gateway to, what was the other term that I had in mind? Well, it's mostly the gateway to hell.
It's basically in Dante's Inferno, it's similar to that, where Dante has to climb down through the 8 levels of hell.
9.
And then...
Well, then he gets to the 9th level after the 8th level.
And the 9th, and then climb down to get to Purgatory. So you have to climb
descent
down
into madness, that's what I was getting at.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, and the cool thing about all the Castlevania games is that there's so many references to like monster movies and like folklore and like all kinds of stuff like that. Like in Symphony of the Night, there's like a scarecrow and a Tin Man and a lion enemy. Like obviously a reference to the Wizard of Oz. There's a lot of reference. There's a reference to Call of Cthulhu. There's references to Greek mythology. It's great. Like the amount of monsters they have that they brought in from all over different kinds of mythology and fiction and all that. It's really cool the way they put it all together.
Dr. John Hammond would say that they spared no expense when it came to collecting the cryptids that remain in Dracula's castle.
Yeah.
I hope the IT department didn't get the shaft in that one, but then again, he could have.
Yeah.
By the high priest of the shafting.
I think another one of Symphony of the Night's cool things that they did too is they added a lot of like secret spells and all this other crazy stuff you could do that you have to like do these crazy like fighting game button combinations to do.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of hidden secrets in that game.
Yeah, you can actually beat it to like 205% or something like that. Like, so obviously 100% as we get through the whole the original castle, then they add another 100% for the upside down castle, but then there's like secret areas you can get to that add those extra couple of percentage points.
Yeah, you could spend a lot of time just trying to collect everything.
Yeah, I have never beat
the game.
I've never beat it 200 and whatever percent. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to find all the secrets and stuff.
I doubt that I did that.
I've come close.
I'm not even sure how close I was. It was a long time ago. I'm sure I was probably like 100. I don't know. Maybe I was 150% at best. But I wasn't looking up everything. I was just trying to get through the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely approached 200%, but I've never gone over it and broken that barrier because it's just there's a lot of like weird, crazy secrets that you have to like know. You have to like kind of like do these like weird things to do. Like one of the interesting things about the game is that you get these familiars. There's a fairy, there's a sword, a ghost, a demon, and it's like just these little things that follow you around and they help you. And like the demon, like a lot of people don't know this, the demon actually opens up some secret areas for you. You'll be walking through and all of a sudden he'll be like, a switch, let's press it and see. And he'll fly over and press the switch and a wall will open up and you get this secret area. So like, there's like all these little hidden secrets and they did such a great job of like, just kind of like peppering these tiny little secrets that you would never know unless you explored and like played through the game multiple times.
Yeah. Well, because, the fellow Iragashi was, he felt that action games were just too short normally.
Yeah.
Which, to his credit, a lot of them were.
Yes.
And he wanted to, like, it started as a side series, like a side story, and then they just started adding more to it. And it just became what it became. But he felt that the action games were too short, and he wanted to make a game that could be enjoyed for a very long time, and it could be played you could really do a lot of digging, and you could really find all these new reasons to love this game. Yeah. And that's when they were originally going to do a just regular stage by stage progression like the previous games, and that's where they decided to go all in on the open castle that you could explore, and where it came to get where it went to get the Metroidvania feel that we know and love, and that's obviously was the best thing for this game. And he used all of that, and he also used the criticism from Simon's Quest, and that's how he pitched Symphony of the Night, and then they also they took a lot of this series after a certain point borrows a lot from Legend of Zelda games to try to help to help with the level design and to help areas of the castle and things like that. And that's also it's also a great well to go to.
Yeah.
And then they added RPG mechanics because they thought that the earlier games were too difficult for the average players, which they were. And and that's where they implemented the level up system. And I love how this game came together because they looked at what was wrong with certain things, or what were the what were the more difficult elements, or what was the least likable elements of the game, and they just cleaned them up and put them together, and they took influence from the right areas. Like this was definitely a great lesson in growth, and on what happens when you listen to your audience.
Yeah.
So this was a well-done game top to bottom, with the exception of the voice acting, which has become its own charm.
Yes.
So you can even say now they did that well, even though they didn't. It's interesting. And they also used the capabilities of the PlayStation to very nicely. Like, it's a very smooth game. Even if you go as far back and play the original, it's a very smooth game. The load times aren't crazy. Mm-hmm. It's a very thorough and enjoyable game.
Yeah, it is.
And the soundtrack is great too.
Yeah, the soundtrack is amazing. That's one of my favorite things about all the Castlevanias. Is the music is just absolutely awesome.
Because it's nice and jazzy.
Well, it's a combination of multiple genres, and there's a lot of neoclassical influence. So there's a lot of like metal guitar combined with classical instruments and stuff. So it's just awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful games, wonderful franchise. I need to play more. I need to play more of them.
Yeah.
And I love how it's turned into this wonderful anime as well. But we really are overdue for a Castlevania game, and I want to see a new one. I would like to see a Symphony of the Night return. Maybe not a direct sequel, but I would like to see a game in that style.
Yeah.
Or really just anything well done I would like to see. But I would prefer to see a Metroidvania one for obviously selfish reasons. But we'll have to see. I hope that they do. I'm sure we'll get one at some point, and hopefully it's not a sexy pachinko game.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
But Castlevania, it's a wonderful franchise, and if you haven't played it, you should play it. Or at least play Symphony of the Night.
Yeah. Definitely. It's a good game to start with. If you're going to get into Castlevania, Symphony of the Night is the one to start with.
It's also most likely one of the few that you'll actually beat.
Yeah.
Especially if you're only playing that and the older ones. The older ones are quite difficult. Symphony of the Night, it's right in the sweet spot. So if you play no other Castlevania games, play Symphony of the Night. Yeah. But do try to watch the anime and play all the other games too.
Yeah. And that's about it.
I think so. Thank you all for sitting down and enjoying another podcast, another Why Does This Exist? Thank you for joining us, and thank you for waiting so patiently.
Yes.
For our October episodes. Again, we apologize that it has taken a bit longer. Life gets in the way. We explained that on the typo negative episode, and also in the update that we so generously provided to you. So thank you for sticking around. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope you have a very happy and healthy and safe Halloween. And we will be trying to catch up on the next on the rest of October. So stay tuned. We're going to try to get a couple more out this week, and or next week. We should be all caught up. So we shall see. But thank you very much for everything that you do in supporting the show and just listening to us. It means a lot. But this concludes our Castlevania episode. Perhaps at a later date we will do we'll do a more thorough analysis of the anime. This has been Why Does This Exist? I have been Chris.
And I have been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.